Hi, everyone. This is Dave Warner with Trailway Tales podcast. And today I've got two people from Parks and Trails New York online. I've got Erica Schneider and Dylan Carey, and they're going to talk to us about the Empire State Trail program, fire trucks and police cars coming by. All, I heard that. All kinds of interesting things. How y'all doing today?
We're good. We're good. Thanks for having us, Dave. It's great to be here. Excited to talk about the Canalway Trail. Yeah, excited to have the chance to chat with you.
Yeah. So, Erica, let's start off with you. I want to hear a little bit about background so people know who you are. We'll start with Erica, then we'll go to Dylan. We'll do the ladies first.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dave. So that's right. I'm Erica Schneider, and I've been with Parks and Trails New York for the last 5 years. I'm originally from Virginia and got a start and interest in bicycling from looking at my parents, riding with my parents growing up on the trails I had near my house in Virginia. Fell absolutely in love with them. Started advocacy work in college to connect more of the trails to my university, which led me to come to Parks and Trails New York, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, to get more involved in this work up here. So I'm a big cyclist. I love bike travel. I've biked across the country. Love big trips, small trips, anything where I'm out on the bike and can spend the night outside.
I didn't know you biked across the country. How was that trip?
Yeah, it was awesome. The trip of a lifetime. Yeah, we made it 3,000 miles from Maine to Montana. The wildfires out there kind of cut it short, but I intend to go back out and finish it someday.
Right. What was the most interesting part of that ride, or the thing that you learned that you didn't expect to learn?
The generosity of people, just the way that people will go out of their way to make you feel welcome, to host us. It was just me and two friends, a group of the three of us on our own. And every town we got to, whether we had a place to stay or not, we were able to find somewhere to either pitch a tent or someone's couch or guest room. It was incredible.
Oh, wow. And I never want to be the center of attention, but I'm going to tell you a story from the other night. It involves the Erie Canal, not the bike path, but they're kind of together, right? Don't you guys think they're kind of the same thing? So I got a call at about 9 o'clock at night from someone at a bar who said that there was a gentleman there from Canada who had come to Little Falls from St. Johnsville and he had no ride back. And it was pouring down rain, pitch black, ground fog. He couldn't get to his boat. And I said, well, how did he get here? And they said, well, he took an Uber. I said, can he Uber his butt back to St. Johnsville? No, nobody's answering. Well, I said, well, what about, we have a taxi service here. What about the taxi? Well, they hung up on us. I said, well, what do you want from me? Well, you always have ideas. And I'm thinking what they want is for me to come out in the middle of the night and take this guy to St. Johnsville to his boat. I said, okay, all right. And of course, my wife was like, you're out of your mind. You're going out in the middle of the night to pick up someone you've never met and take them to their boat. All right. So I did. I went down to Gigi's Italian Feast here in Little Falls. Mm-hmm. Got this gentleman. He was an older man from Canada. And he started talking to me the whole way to St. Johnsville. And I don't know where the turnoff is to the harbor in St. Johnsville. So he's got his phone out and I'm telling him, you tell me when to turn. All right. So we're driving along. He's yakking. He's got a 33-foot boat. It's all motorized. He's by himself. I said, how do you do that? He's like, well, it's all, automated these days. It's easy. Right. I'm thinking, yeah, I wouldn't do it, but okay. So we're through St. Johnsville by then. And I'm like, there's no way the turn is way out here. Little did I know at that moment in time, do you know how you can track like your spouse, your kids on Life 360? Yeah. My wife is watching on the Life 360 app, and she thinks I've been kidnapped by a serial killer from Canada because that's usually what they have up there, right? So anyway, so she calls. I see unknown number on the screen. I go to answer it anyway, thinking it might be her, and it clicks off. So now she has a hang up. I'm way past St. Johnsville, sitting in a parking lot by that point in time because I'm not going any further. And he's saying, yeah, I think it's way back there. And I'm like, but you have the GPS. Come on. So start to loop back around. And finally, I start going through back streets thinking it's got to be, there's this street that says Bridge Street going across, the Erie Canal. It's got to be somewhere around there.
Yep.
I'm driving around. She finally calls again and says, "You need to turn right. You need to turn left." And he's looking at me going, "Who? How does she know where you are? How is she giving you instructions in real time?" And then he goes, "Is that the mayor?" And I said, yes. And so it all ended up well, but I said, we are the friendliest community along the canal, aren't we? So it was pretty interesting. But anyway, that reminded me of, interesting tales of biking and people and how they behave to cyclists and how they treat them. I've seen that here. And you're right. That's one of the most memorable things about any kind of ride on the trail or on the canal. So Dylan, your short story. No.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't involve driving to St. Johnsville in the middle of the night, but
No.
so I'm a native of upstate New York. I grew up in Schenectady, and as such, grew up riding on the Canalway Trail. I didn't know of it at the time as sort of the Canalway Trail. Didn't know of it as sort of part of this broader Boston or Buffalo to Albany network. Didn't know sort of the bigger picture of it. I was just a kid that liked to go for a ride on his bike, and we would just call it the bike path. You go over to the bike path and go for a ride on the bike path, and that was what I would do in the summers with my dad or with buddies. And then went to college, went to SUNY Albany, got involved in local government. I was always interested in what can I do, how can I be involved to make my community a better place. And so got involved in politics and government. Stopped doing that after a couple of years and went to grad school, got my master's in city and regional planning. I was down in Brooklyn, but I always felt disconnected there. I felt like I needed to be in the place that I cared about the most passionately. And that's, my hometown, my home area, that was upstate. And so about 6 years ago, moved back up to Albany, and was so fortunate to be able to get this role with Parks and Trails New York, where we're doing this work to really engage with, not just parks, not just thinking about these resources as sort of inanimate objects, but thinking about them as really community resources and how they're used by the people who are using them and how we can improve them, not just sort of so that they look nicer on a picture or something, but improve them so that the people who use them have a better experience. And so that they're just more enjoyable for people to come and sort of provide that joy in everybody's day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of an awakening when it comes to people understanding the importance of the trail system and people on it, not just economic. I mean, maybe just mental health, if anything else, right? And I had mentioned before we went on air this booklet that came from Herkimer, Oneida County, and it was given to me by a legislator, and he said, "I didn't realize how important this was, the trail system and the feeder trails and things like that." And I think that people are starting to realize that it's a big deal. It's not just getting on your bicycle and riding somewhere. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And as the trail system gets more connected, you're seeing that impact that it has on the communities. You're providing that resource to more people. You're seeing that people, it doesn't take much for somebody to get out on the trail and say, "Oh, this is wonderful." Like, maybe they haven't been on a bike since they were a kid, and then they get back on a bike and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is a lot of fun. This wasn't just like fun because I was a little kid. This is just fun for everybody." And so the more that you've got these safe places for people to walk and to ride, the more they're going to use them. And the more that you've got them also, the more you're going to see people coming from around the country to use them, to try to explore other ones, whether that's going to the next county over, me driving out from Albany to Little Falls to ride the trail there, or somebody coming from Canada or from Australia or from, around the country to ride the trail. People start to go further and further away to find new trails, to find that slightly different experience, but also always love coming to their local trail. And you start to see that economic impact. You start to see the sort of benefits to the communities. We did an economic impact study of the Canalway Trail back in 2014. At that time, we estimated that the Canalway Trail had $253 million in economic impact per year. Now, that was based on before a lot of the projects to help close gaps in the trail were completed, before the Empire State Trail was ever a thing, before, really the trail has gotten to the point it is today. And honestly, the other thing was before all of the shutdowns during COVID got people back out on trails in a big way. And so now that you've got all of those factors, we see use on the trail is so much higher than it used to be. Our estimate for total use across the Canalway Trail system is nearly 4 million visits a year now. And those visits, that level of economic impact, you're talking about, significantly higher, probably near $1 billion a year in economic impact to New York State from people coming from around the country to visit and to ride or walk or whatever it is that they do on the Canalway Trail system.
And Dylan, give me kind of what is the mission for Parks and Trails? Just the kind of short description, and then I want to get into some of the programs.
Yeah, so Parks and Trails New York is an independent statewide nonprofit. We've been around for nearly 40 years. And our mission is really to ensure that communities are making the most of their public lands resources. How are we protecting the public lands? How are we stewarding them to make sure that they are really, again, not just these sort of static things that exist and are out there, but that they are these sort of dynamic places that people feel ownership in, that they feel loved, and that they are given, provide the resources for people to give back to their communities, give back to their local parks or to their trail system. And how can we work to expand the trail system to make sure that it can benefit more of the communities around the state and provide safe places for people to walk, to hike, to bike, just make those connections more broadly.
Yeah. So you've both been there more than 5 years, 5 to 6. Erica, from your standpoint, how have things changed in the last 5 years? How is the trajectory going?
Yeah, I guess in terms of the state's lands and the trail system,
Right.
2020, the end of 2020 saw the opening of the Empire State Trail, which was just a huge victory, a huge moment for New York State to see so many of our trails connected into one more formal system with wayfinding. And for the listeners that don't know the Empire State Trail, it goes all the way from Buffalo to Albany, and as the east-west leg, the Erie Canalway Trail, and from New York City to the Canadian border, totaling 750 miles across the state. And many of these trails are actual trails off-road, but some of them are still on-road marked routes. So that's what's included in those 750 miles. But the biggest changes have been seeing those connections and seeing communities start to recognize the value of being part of this bigger system that they can tap into, whether it's for economic development or as public health infrastructure, or as a place to celebrate community-wide events. I mean, not to mention having the last couple of years been part of the bicentennial celebration of the Erie Canal. 2025, this year we have coming up, will be the celebration of the completion of the Erie Canal, that bicentennial. So using the trail as a way to celebrate this historic resource.
How are you mixing the two? Because I know we're thinking about that here, and it's mainly because the trail is just, the trail and the harbor and the water, they're right by each other in Little Falls. So it's easy to see them as a pair, right? But how are you both, Dylan, looking forward to making that combined experience for that 200-year anniversary? Because that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. I think it's, the history of the Erie Canal is something that, the impact that it had on the country and on sort of how we've gotten to where we are today. And honestly, on world history, it can't be understated. It really was transformative in how it connected the sort of the heartland of the country with the ports on the coast. And New York City is the city it is today because of the Erie Canal. The history is, it goes, the various social movements that sprung up along the canal, the sort of exchange of ideas. The history of the canal can't be understated at all. And it's also true that the main way that the vast majority of people interface and interact and get a chance to experience the canal is by the Canalway Trail. You don't need to own an expensive 33-foot boat from Canada. You don't need to own any of these kinds of
We're
things.
hitting that poor guy again, aren't we? He probably will see this.
Why didn't he just take the boat to Little Falls to go to the bar? Jeez.
The backstory was he pulled into St. Johnsville. Nothing was open to eat. He found out there was something in Little Falls. Gigi's was open. It was a Monday night.
We
Yeah.
love
And,
Gigi's Monday night.
Monday
Yep.
night, that I did convince them to stay open Monday nights. And so he traveled her here via Uber. And of course, there we go from the story.
There you go. Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, so I mean, I think that the truth is that the Canalway Trail is the main way that people sort of experience the canal system and read that history of what's happened to the canal and get to see it. And so, the two, you can't really separate the two. The Canalway Trail is the way that this bicentennial of the canal will largely be separated from people out doing rides or walks or coming to visit some of the locks to our Cycle the Erie Canal bike tour, which next year will be in its 27th year. And we're planning a lot of big celebrations as part of the bicentennial to make sure that, this year's edition is the most special version yet.
Wow. Yeah, we're looking at the same thing because, the Seneca Chief, which was, built with the Buffalo Maritime Museum and that project, the first boat that President McKinley came down the canal on, is stopping in Little Falls October 11th. So we're looking at ways to make that a big deal as well, and including the trail. Yep. And, we've got an idea for a water trail kind of run event as well to incorporate and mix those two things. So it's like Canal Celebration Part 2.
Yes. Yes.
I'm think, oh my God, just what we need, right?
Yeah. I think the whole year is just going to be just full of celebrations of the canal's history, full of places where people can celebrate that history of the canal, whether it's the Seneca Chief's journey from Buffalo to New York Harbor and back to do that wedding of the water, sort of remember that wedding of the waters ceremony from 200 years ago, or the World Canals Conference, which is going to be held in Buffalo in 2025. Or I mentioned our Cycle the Erie Canal bike tour. It really is. There's going to be so many great opportunities to sort of celebrate that history and to celebrate what's happening along the canal system and to look at the next 100 years, the next 200 years of the canal and think about how we can make sure that history is preserved, that story of not just look at the great engineering achievement, because it absolutely was, but look at the impact it had on the lives of the people throughout the corridor, how it changed what it meant to live in New York State at the time. The sort of the exchange of ideas, the rise of important social movements, the rise of the women's rights movement, and the inextricable link between that and the canal's history. All of those stories are going to be magnified this year under that lens of the bicentennial. And so it really is a great opportunity to just get out and experience so many of the different events that'll be happening and just a great opportunity for us all to learn and to be thinking forward as well.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys along the way, since you've been there, have come up with a lot of different programs. I want to talk about the Empire State Trail Town program. And Erica, maybe you can tell me whose brilliant idea this was. I actually think it's a good idea. I wasn't being funny, but maybe you could give me the backstory on that.
Yeah, so for over 20 years, we've worked with the Canal Corporation to support the promotion and activation of the Canalway Trail system. And going back at least a decade, probably more, we had been running a program called Bicyclists Bring Business, which was a 2-day event. We would come into a community, hold a community workshop, go on a bike around, explore the community with the elected officials to see where the opportunities were, where the gaps were. And we had been running this successful program for a long time, but we really didn't feel like we felt like we could have a bigger impact if we spent more time working with the community, developing community capacity, so that at the end of that, at the end of our technical assistance, the community would have the capacity to build on that, activate, and implement the recommendations that we suggested. So we looked around the country at other successful examples of this type of thing. We looked to the Great Allegheny Passage, which has a trail town program along it. We used that as a model to start the Empire State Trail Town program in 2021. We kicked it off with one, maybe it was 2022. We kicked it off with one pilot community, the village of Brockport, that demonstrated that they were going above and beyond to offer services and amenities to cyclists, and that they were committed to improving that experience. And through working with them, we really had a successful, very positive experience, and took it even bigger the next year to work with 3 more communities: Lockport, Newark, and Rome. And from there, we just said we can't stop. We are loving this. We're able to really have a tangible impact by providing this expertise that we bring as people that know what touring cyclists want, as the people that are constantly interfacing with that audience, with that segment of the population. And we took it then to 4 new communities in 2024, which of course are the city of Little Falls, city of Amsterdam, and then up the Champlain Canalway Trail to Schuylerville and Fort Edward. So the goal of the program is to work with communities to help them understand the benefits, and then seek to increase those benefits, whether they're attracting visitors for economic development or just providing more resources for outdoor recreation for their residents, and taking advantage of the Empire State Trail as the focal point around which to build those positive benefits.
I think one of the things it's done just from being part of this going on here is it's allowed us to focus. Whereas before you might have people who are interested in the trail and others who are not. I wasn't a trail person. I'm not riding a bike out there going from here to there, but involved in economic development. And so it allows you to focus on this aspect of it and hear ideas from other communities, other people who are involved in this, like yourselves or others that are coming through now, and go, this is really a big deal. And there's some things we could do if we focus that we could actually accomplish things, kind of thing. So I think otherwise it would have been just little groups here and there that would have said, oh, I'm interested in the trail. And they'd really never get anything done, kind of thing. But I think the program has brought focus, if anything else, from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's always something that we look at is, how can we be that spark? Parks and Trails New York is a relatively small organization. There's only about a dozen of us that work here. And it's a big state. So, we're not coming in and saying, we've got all these resources to be able to tell you exactly what to do, and to be this sort of, one size fits all approach that, we come in and we do all these things, and then bam, you're solved. It's really about working with the community. It's about a bottom up approach where you are trying to identify in each of these communities, all right, who has that capacity? Who are doing these little things that you talked about, Dave? Maybe here or there, or, there is this one group that's involved from this perspective. Maybe in some communities, you've got really strong Rotary groups that are involved in doing a lot of service out on the trail, or you've got, a strong Scout community that are involved in doing those kinds of things. In some communities, you have strong economic development programs where they're really looking at some of these resources. Some communities have really strong bicycle and pedestrian advocate communities that are doing that. So how do you bring these things together? How do you provide that sort of guidance and spark? And the truth is that, sort of our presence being there as this sort of convener helps to bring that all together in these communities. And then we try to make sure that we're very honest with the communities we work with. We don't come in with grant money. We don't have any grant money to give you. We're not coming in to say, do all these things and then here's the money, here's money. And so you feel like you have to do them just so you can get the money from us. We're also honest about this is a 1-year program. We're here. And then at the end of the program, we'll be still supportive. You'll be part of a network, but our sort of intensive support sort of ends at the end of the year. So you'll get out of it what you're willing to put into it. Your community will benefit as much as you're willing to come together as a community And we're happy to provide that structure and that guidance and those resources, but we can't do it all for you. And it never would be successful if it was reliant on us as an outside entity. I mean, Erica and I both love visiting Little Falls. We love visiting all of these communities that we work with, but neither of us live in the community. You know, we both live in Albany. And so being able to provide that structure and that framework and just sort of give the communities that boost to get started and then run with the ball. Once they're a trail town, it really is that sort of coalescing thing where they see all these opportunities. We do provide like an agenda for the communities at the end of the program that lines out some of the things that we think they should be pursuing, but we're not looking over their shoulder saying, wait, have you done number 1 yet? Oh, you can't do number 2 until you've done number 1. No, it's more of sort of a menu, a template of here are things that we think you should pursue from our professional expertise. It's on you to pursue those. We're happy to support, but it's on you to pursue them. And so I think that's what makes the program successful, is that it does really rely on that local energy to be able to see these impacts in their communities.
God, you took all the weight off my shoulders. I kept thinking, we've got to do all these things they listed. There's brush over the stairway by Lock 17. We've got to get it out.
Well,
I look at it as something that has to be done. They brought it up. We got to do it.
Hey, if you get it done, then it'll be better for it. I mean, that's the thing. We're not calling.
It was done.
All right. But, we're not calling things out because, we're not just picking out these lists of things from, sort of a standard form, okay, these are our list of 8 things that we include in every single community's recommendations. Erica mentioned that we do these bike rounds in the communities, and it really is to try to, both for ourselves to get that perspective, but also to bring the community into this perspective of, if you are a visiting trail user to this community, if you're coming to a community and you've not been there before, how does the community present itself to these visiting trail users? What is you may know that, if you just go, 2 blocks down to the left, that's where the businesses are. That's where you can find, the restaurants that are open on Monday nights. But if you are not from this community, how would you know that? How are we telling? And what is the sort of the public face that you're presenting to the community? If you come into a community and the trail's all overgrown and it's not welcoming, you're not going to feel like you want to stay in that community. You're going to want to feel like, okay, I'm just going to keep going and maybe the next place will be nicer. But if you come in and you're like, oh, where am I? This place looks awesome. Look at these great signs. Look at how, nicely upkept it is. That's going to be a place where you're like, maybe this is where I stop. Maybe this is where I go get some food. Maybe this is where I spend some time, going into these shops and do some shopping. Or maybe I'll send, my family members a couple of souvenirs from my time here. And then once you've got the community, these visitors into the community, that's when you can really dazzle them and say, oh man, Little Falls, I stopped in there for like an hour on my bike trip, but I got to come back there because that was a really nice place. And maybe that's where I'll plan to spend a night the next time I'm in the area. So
that's where I'll retire. You never know who you're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are working from home, it looks like, so you could work anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Albany. Yeah. Well, another thing I've learned too is I think it's not in a bad way. It's a lot more work than I thought. I mean, there's a lot more. As I think about it, where we are now, with the big announcement, we got selected, and there are still people that don't get it. And so I feel like there's this constant work to engage them. And, sometimes you just want to grab them around the throat and say, do you not get this? All right. It's not just because I'm involved with it that it's a big deal. It's because it's a big deal without me. Right. It's a big deal for the community. And don't you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a ton of research from all over the country that shows, one of the biggest barriers oftentimes can be the business community that doesn't understand the benefits of trail tourism or of bike infrastructure connecting to the trail in their community. But their studies have shown again and again that cyclists bring more business. It's the name of one of our handbooks, that cyclists bring business, bicyclists bring business. and they're going to businesses more frequently. They might not buy as much in one given trip, but they'll come again and again and build those relationships with the business community. I mean, I'm just thinking of the businesses in Little Falls that really go above and beyond, that really do get it, like the co-op, like my God, Alpaca Gardens,
Yeah.
like
Andy, yeah.
like Gigi's, that are open on Mondays. Those businesses. Oh, not to mention the whole district, the Canal District.
Canal Place.
Side,
Canal Place, and
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, all you folks down there.
All of us hermits down here. No. We just got over the Garlic Festival and 6,000 people being down here in this little space Saturday. So I'm still trying to repair my body from that, walking all day. Oh my God. Where do you see the program going? Next year it's probably going to be more communities, but maybe 3-5 years out, what would your expectation be? Dylan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that there's a few different things that we're looking at. One is that continuing to work with new communities. I mean, the Canalway Trail the Erie Canalway Trail is 360 miles from Buffalo to Albany. The Champlain is another 60 miles. And, it gets back to that history. The Erie Canal was known as sort of the mother of communities because of all these different little towns and villages that sprung up every, basically as far as a mule could walk without needing a break.
Right.
And so you've got these little communities all along. And so there's a ton of places that we haven't yet had the chance to work with that have a ton of potential. Both communities that are sort of in this, like what I'm going to call a medium size range, places like Little Falls, places like Newark or Lockport, but then also some of the much smaller communities that maybe you are only talking about a couple of businesses, but they really can still benefit from the trail, or some of the larger cities. You can't have the trail is not going to be as successful as it can be without real sort of buy-in from places like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Albany. These places need to be fully bought into the trail as part of this critical statewide tourism infrastructure, but also of their critical role in sort of ensuring that the trail is as successful as it can be. So I think looking at both of those two avenues, how are we working with both smaller and larger communities, is something that we need to get into. Erica, do you?
Yeah. I'll just add on that we're really looking at a trail where every single community provides the services and amenities that cyclists and canal users are looking for, and that when visitors arrive, they know what to expect, they know where to find them, they know that this trail is a world-class experience. I'm getting chills just talking about it, but
you're really into this. You're into this. I know.
It will be the premier. It is currently the premier long distance trail in the United States, but it will continue to strive for improvement, enhancement, and be the place when people talk about coming to do a bike trip, they're talking about New York State.
Wow.
And I think the other thing I would add to that is just that I think we see the program growing by it not just being sort of us as this connective tissue, but the communities connecting with each other better. Being able to say like, hey, we're interested in pursuing, getting a bike shop to come to the community, or trying to install some repair tools at our trailhead, or trying to, do some new signage to get people into our business. And it's not just, us providing our insight, but we're connecting the different trail town communities with one another. So there can be this shared learning. There can be this sort of network both of support and of idea sharing. And then I think we'd also like to see more resources directed to these communities, public funding going to support this trail-based tourism concept in a much more significant way than it does now. More promotion of the idea of long-distance trail trips through our tourism community. More state funding and other public funding for trail-based tourism infrastructure. I think we need to see that. And, the other piece of Erica's vision that I would echo is continuing to make the trail the premier statewide trail involves getting it to be 100% off-road. Right now there are still stretches where you have to ride on road with traffic. And while plenty of people are comfortable with doing that, you're not going to have this premier resource until you get it all off-road. And then it can be a resource that people of all ages and abilities can really, truly enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I found out that there's a lot more to it. And I think, if you're a passionate cyclist, like both of you are, you get it automatically. And somehow we've got to figure out a way to, get the people who aren't or will never be to understand it. And that's what I see. One of the things for us going forward in talking to businesses and still trying to focus on, bike friendly and bike racks and simple things. I mean, I was looking at the brewery the other day, and I don't know if Mike down there had thought about a bicycle rack before we started talking to him about it, but I looked down there and the thing was full.
Yeah.
And I thought, those are people buying beers that might not have otherwise. And that's an economic impact to your business.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll say is that there are people buying beers that now aren't going to be driving home as well. I mean, I'm not an advocate of necessarily, biking under the influence, but it is
cycling under the influence. Is that ticketable?
I think if you're over certain limits, yes, that is something you want to be careful about. But yeah, I think that there's definitely less of a risk to injuring others if you're doing that. So
right.
It's definitely something where we want to encourage, whether it's walking or biking, thinking about that broader active transportation network.
All right. Well, have we covered everything?
I think
anything
so.
else?
Yeah. Erica, do you have anything to?
Well, I could keep talking about this for hours. You know that.
I knew that. Yeah, I was watching the clock. We're at 36 minutes. We're good.
Yeah, we can call it there.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you coming on, explaining, Parks and Trails and the Trail Town program and things like that. And hopefully we keep this going, and we'll circle back next year, since you're going to not abandon us, but wean us off on our own.
Add you to the network of fully certified Empire State Trail Towns, so you can better make those connections with the other communities, and we can start to get to know some of these really dynamic sort of change makers in a set of new communities.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. I know that signage has been really, for us, the thing we're really focusing on is one of the biggest problems that we have. Yeah. So big push for that.
Yep, I think that's a big push everywhere, and we look forward to seeing it.
All right. Well, thank you both of you for being on the show. For everyone else, we will see you next time on the Trailway Tales podcast.